I am staring at a leaked email right now, and I need you to understand what I am looking at. This isn't a speculation. This isn't a conspiracy theory. This is a document from the Department of Homeland Security that was just leaked to the San Francisco Chronicle, and what it reveals should terrify every single American who still believes in democracy. On Monday, Donald Trump had a phone call with Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. According to multiple reports, Trump told Walz that maybe things had gone too far in Minneapolis. Maybe they needed to draw down the operation. Maybe, just maybe, after 2 American citizens were shot dead by ICE agents, it was time to pull back. That same day, that exact same day, Pete Hegseth authorized the Department of Homeland Security to take over Fort Snelling, a military base outside the Minneapolis-St. Paul airport. And here's what that leaked email says they need the base for. I am going to read this to you word for word because you need to hear this. They need space to park approximately 300 to 500 vehicles and 10 storage trailers, a ready room for approximately 500 to 800 Customs and Border Patrol personnel, space to house, maintain, and operate 5 CBP air assets, access to a magazine to store munitions, and other necessary facilities to support operations in the Minneapolis, Minnesota metropolitan area. Does that sound like an operation that S drawing down? Does that sound like a president who realized he went too far and is pulling back? Or does that sound like a military occupation that S just getting started? I spent the last 3 days reading through over 1,200 comments from people trying to make sense of what S happening in Minneapolis, and I found something that genuinely shocked me. About 38% of the comments came from people who are absolutely convinced this is all justified, that we are just enforcing immigration law, that if you are here illegally, you should expect to be deported. But here's what those comments are missing. Here's what I think a lot of people are missing. This isn't about immigration anymore. I don't know if it ever was. Let me show you why I believe that. Minnesota has approximately 130,000 unauthorized immigrants. That's about 2.2% of the state's total population. Texas, by comparison, has encountered over 7.3 million illegal immigrants since January 2021. Florida has around 900,000 undocumented immigrants, making up about 4.1% of their population. So why Minnesota? Why are we seeing military-level operations with 500 to 800 federal agents, air assets, munitions storage, and now a military base being used as a command center in a state with one of the smaller undocumented populations? Why not Florida? Why not Texas? Why not California? And before you say it, because Minnesota is a sanctuary city, let me point something out. Boise, Idaho is also a sanctuary city. Where's the massive ICE operation there? Oh, wait, Idaho votes Republican. Funny how that works. I want you to remember something Tom Homan said back in May. Listen to this carefully. He was asked why they don't just arrest the leaders of sanctuary cities who are harboring illegal aliens. His exact words were about arresting mayors of blue cities, not cities with the highest undocumented populations, not cities with the most crime. Blue cities. This is the same Tom Homan who was the architect of the child separation policy during Trump's first term. The same Tom Homan who, along with Stephen Miller, advocated for separating children from their mothers at the border as a deterrent. And he's the one who Trump brought back after removing Greg Bovino, the guy who was supposedly too extreme. Now let me tell you what I discovered when I dug into Fort Snelling. And I'm not going to lie to you. When I learned this, it made my blood run cold. Fort Snelling was used in the 1860s as an internment camp after the Dakota Uprising of 1862. Hundreds of Dakota people died there, and later, a man named Dred Scott was enslaved at Fort Snelling. Dred Scott, who sued for his freedom in a case that went all the way to the Supreme Court. I don't think it's an accident that they reusing this location. I think Stephen Miller knows exactly what he is doing. This is a man who understands symbolism, who understands history, who understands how to send a message. And what's the message? I believe the message is this. We can do whatever we want. We can occupy an American city. We can kill American citizens, and there's nothing you can do about it. Let me tell you about the 2 American citizens who were killed, Renee Good and Alex Pretty. We still don't know the names of the agents who shot Alex Pretty. It's been days. This is supposedly a democracy with accountability and transparency, but we don't know who pulled the trigger. We don't know if they were facing any investigation. We don't know anything. I saw a video yesterday that I can just stop thinking about. An ICE agent is talking to someone who is filming, and the person says they're going to raise their voice if needed. And the ICE agent responds, and I quote, "If you raise your voice, I'll erase your voice." Think about that. A federal agent operating on American soil in an American city threatening to erase someone's voice for speaking too loudly. That's not law enforcement. That's intimidation. That's authoritarianism. And the communities affected by this are suffering in ways most Americans aren't seeing. Mixed status families, families where some members are documented and some are NT, have had to stay inside during this entire operation. They running out of food. They asking for a moratorium on evictions. Children are watching ICE agents walk up and down their streets in packs. One commenter from downtown Minneapolis said they have 3 go bags by their door for different scenarios, 3 different escape plans. In America, in 2025, now here's where this gets even more disturbing. I obtained another leaked email, this one from Joshua Andrew Post, the acting assistant chief of the United States Border Patrol. The subject line reads, Updated Metro Surge Wave 4, January 31st, 2026 to March 3rd, 2026. Wave 4, they've planned this in waves. This email was sent the same day Trump told Governor Walz they were drawing down, and it says, and I am quoting directly, there has been a lot of rumors regarding the status of Metro Surge today. As of the latest report, Metro Surge is steady state and expected to continue as planned. So while Trump is on the phone making nice with the governor, his administration is sending internal emails confirming that nothing is changing. In fact, they re-escalating. They moving to a military base specifically to avoid protesters, to avoid accountability, to avoid cameras. The protesters have been incredibly effective, you see. They've been making noise outside the hotels where ICE agents are staying, blowing whistles, making it impossible for these agents to sleep peacefully after spending their days terrorizing families. So the solution isn't to stop terrorizing families. The solution is to move to a military base where protesters can reach them. Let me address something I've been seeing in about 42% of the comments. People saying this is just Trump being Trump, that he is chaotic and incompetent, and this is all just poorly planned madness. And look, I get it. Trump is chaotic. He is incompetent in many ways. But I don't think that what's happening here. I think this is extremely well planned. And I think the person doing the planning is Stephen Miller. Miller is the one who has been consistent throughout both Trump administrations. Miller is the one with the ideological conviction. Miller is the one who doesn't just want to deport undocumented immigrants. He wants to reshape America into his vision of what it should be. And his vision doesn't include sanctuary cities, doesn't include blue states exercising autonomy, doesn't include dissent. Remember, Trump said during his campaign that he wanted to use American cities as training grounds for military operations. A lot of people thought that was just Trump being hyperbolic, just Trump talking tough for his base. But what if he meant it? What if Minneapolis is the training ground? What if they retesting how much they can get away with before the midterm elections? Because here is what nobody is talking about enough. The midterms are coming, and Trump knows, everyone in his administration knows, that if Democrats take back the House and Senate, he is in serious trouble. The investigations will intensify. The oversight will return. The possibility of impeachment becomes real again. Several commenters pointed out something I hadn't fully considered. They noted that around 60% of comments expressed fear that this is all about the elections, about voter intimidation, about creating enough chaos and fear that voting becomes difficult or impossible in certain areas, about having a pretext to declare an emergency and potentially delay or interfere with elections. Now, I'm not saying definitively that the plan. I can read minds, I can prove intent, but I can look at patterns, and the pattern I am seeing is deeply disturbing. ICE is requesting voter registration rolls from states. Pam Bondi sent a letter threatening that if states hand over their voter registrations, ICE 1 to be removed from their cities. Think about what that means. Federal law enforcement is being used as leverage to obtain voter information that could be used for intimidation, information that could be used to challenge voters at the polls. Some of you are probably thinking I'm being paranoid, that I am connecting dots that aren't there, and maybe you rewrite. Maybe I am wrong about this part. But let me ask you something. If you were someone who wanted to stay in power, who knew you were deeply unpopular, who knew the midterms were likely to go against you, who knew that losing power meant potential prison time for various crimes, what would you do? Would you play by the rules, or would you look for every possible way to tilt the playing field? Would you use federal law enforcement to create chaos in blue cities? Would you try to intimidate voters? Would you lay the groundwork for claiming the elections were illegitimate if you lost? I spoke to someone yesterday, a military veteran who served in Afghanistan, and he said something that stuck with me. He said this operation in Minneapolis looks less like law enforcement and more like counterinsurgency tactics. The way they re-moving in waves, the way they re-establishing a forward operating base, the way they retreating an American city like enemy territory. And maybe that's exactly how they see it. Maybe Minneapolis isn't an American city that needs law enforcement. Maybe in their minds it has enemy territory that needs to be pacified. I found a comment from someone claiming to be a former ICE agent, and I have no way to verify if it is real, but what they said aligns with other things I've been hearing. They said the culture within ICE right now is unlike anything they've ever seen. That agents are being told they have unlimited authority, that they don't need to worry about oversight or consequences, that any resistance from local authorities or citizens is to be treated as obstruction at minimum or potentially as terrorism. Now, ICE hasn't officially confirmed that the culture, and I want to be clear, I'm not saying every ICE agent believes this. But multiple reports from multiple sources suggest this is the message being sent from leadership. And when you combine that with Tom Homan's rhetoric, with Stephen Miller's ideology, with Trump's authoritarian instincts, the picture that emerges is frightening. Let's talk about the logistics of what they are planning at Fort Snelling. 500 to 800 personnel, 300 to 500 vehicles, 10 storage trailers, 5 aircraft, a munitions magazine. That's not a law enforcement operation. That is a military occupation force, and it's being directed at an American city. I want to read you something from the comments that really hit me. Someone wrote, "I live in downtown Minneapolis. Seeing ICE walk down the street in packs is unnerving. I have 3 go bags by the door for different scenarios. My friends live in the suburbs, and ICE walks in packs up and down their streets and through their yards. Their kids try to make sense of it all. People are scared. This is an American citizen in an American city living in fear of their own government, living with escape bags packed, trying to explain to their children why armed federal agents are marching through their neighborhoods. Is this making America great again? Is this the freedom and prosperity we were promised? Or is this exactly what many of us warned about when Trump talked about being a dictator on day one? Now I want to address the people who think this is all justified, who think if we are just enforcing immigration law, then the tactics don't matter. Let me ask you something. Even if you believe every single unauthorized immigrant should be deported, do you think this is the way to do it? Do you think military occupations of American cities are appropriate? Do you think killing American citizens is acceptable collateral damage? Because that's what we were talking about. 2 American citizens are dead. Renee Good and Alex Pretty are dead. They are not coming back. And for what? What were their crimes? Being in the wrong place at the wrong time when federal agents decided to use deadly force. And we still don't have answers about why deadly force was necessary. We don't have body camera footage released. We don't have independent investigations announced. We just have the government saying, trust us, it was justified. The same government that told Governor Walz they were drawing down while simultaneously moving to a military base and planning through March. I spent a lot of time reading comments from people defending this operation, trying to understand their perspective. And the most compelling argument I found goes something like this. We have immigration laws. Those laws aren't being enforced. Sanctuary cities are deliberately obstructing federal law. Therefore, the federal government has the right to come in with force and enforce those laws. And look, I understand that argument. I genuinely do. There is a legitimate debate to be had about immigration policy, about sanctuary city policies, about federalism and the balance of power between federal and state governments. But here is where I still disagree. Even if you believe the federal government has the right to enforce immigration law in sanctuary cities, surely there's a difference between law enforcement and military occupation. Surely there's a difference between targeted deportations of convicted criminals and indiscriminate raids that terrorize entire communities. Surely there's a difference between necessary force and killing American citizens. And I keep coming back to this question, why Minnesota? If this is really just about immigration enforcement, why are we seeing this level of operation in a state with a relatively small, undocumented population? Why not start with the states that have the biggest populations? Why not start with the states where there is actually a border? Unless it's not about immigration. Unless it's about power. unless it's about sending a message to blue states that if you resist, if you declare yourself a sanctuary, if you dare to defy the Trump administration, this is what happens. Governor Tim Walz said something interesting after his call with Trump. He said they had a good conversation, that Trump seemed willing to work together, that maybe cooler heads were prevailing, and then hours later, we get the leaked emails showing nothing has changed. The operation continues. The military base is being prepared. Wave 4 is scheduled through March. So either Trump lied to the governor or Trump himself doesn't know what his own administration is doing. And I'm not sure which possibility is worse. A president who deliberately lies about military operations on American soil, or a president who is so detached from his own administration that Pete Hegseth and Stephen Miller can conduct military occupations without his knowledge. Some commenters suggested this is all a negotiating tactic, that Trump always goes extreme and then pulls back to make the compromise position seem reasonable. And maybe there is some of that happening, but I would argue that when American citizens are dead, when families are hiding in their homes, when children are growing up watching federal agents patrol their streets, we've gone way beyond negotiating tactics into something much darker. I found a comment from someone claiming to be Danish, and what they said broke my heart. They talked about how Denmark sent troops to Afghanistan to support America, how Danish soldiers died fighting alongside Americans, and now America is threatening Denmark over Greenland. They said they used to see America as the defender of freedom and democracy, and now they see us as something else entirely, as something frightening. And I thought about that, about how the rest of the world is watching this, watching us occupy our own cities, watching us kill our own citizens, watching us abandon allies and embrace dictators. What must they think? What message are we sending? But let us bring this back to Minnesota, because Minnesota is where this is happening right now. Minnesota is the testing ground, and what happens in Minnesota will determine what happens next. If they succeed in Minneapolis, if they can conduct a military occupation of an American city without serious consequences, without massive pushback, without accountability, then what to stop them from doing it in Chicago, in Los Angeles, in New York, in every blue city in America? That's what I believe this is really about. Not immigration, control, power, the systematic dismantling of any resistance to Trump's vision of America. And here as the thing that keeps me up at night. It might work because Americans are busy. We retired. We re-overwhelmed. Most people aren't reading leaked emails from DHS. Most people aren't tracking the waves of Metro surge. Most people are just trying to get through their day, feed their families, pay their bills. That is what authoritarianism counts on. Not that people will actively support it, but that they'll be too exhausted to resist it. That by the time they realize what's happening, it'll be too late. But I also see something else in these comments. I see people who refuse to give up. I see protesters who are out there in 5-degree weather in the dark making noise outside ICE facilities. I see ordinary citizens filming everything, documenting every abuse, refusing to let this happen in the shadows. I see elected officials like Governor Walz trying to navigate an impossible situation, trying to protect their citizens while dealing with a federal government that lies to them. And I see millions of Americans who are paying attention, who are angry, who are scared, but who are also determined not to let their country become something unrecognizable. So what do we do? That is the question I keep getting. What can we actually do about this? First, we document everything, every video, every photo, every witness account of what's happening in Minneapolis needs to be preserved and shared. They moving to a military base specifically to avoid documentation. Don T. let them hide. Second, we support the people of Minneapolis. There are mutual aid networks providing food and legal support to affected communities. There are bail funds for people arrested. There are organizations fighting this in court. Find them, support them. Third, we call our representatives. And I know that sounds insufficient. I know it sounds like the kind of thing people say when they don't have better answers. But members of Congress are paying attention to constituent calls. They measuring political risk. Make that political risk real. Fourth, we prepare for this to come to our cities, because I believe it will. Study what's happening in Minneapolis. Learn from the protesters there. Build networks of support before you need them. And fifth, we vote. They might try to interfere with the midterms. They might try to create chaos and fear. We vote anyway. We show up anyway. We refuse to be intimidated. Look, I could be wrong about all of this. Maybe Metro Surge really is winding down and those leaked emails were outdated. Maybe the Fort Snelling operation is just logistics and nothing sinister. Maybe I am seeing patterns where there's only chaos. But I don't think I'm wrong. I think we're watching something unprecedented in American history. A domestic military operation against an American city conducted under the guise of immigration enforcement, but really about power and control and testing the limits of what they can get away with. And I think Minnesota is just the beginning. The people of Minneapolis didn't ask for this. They didn't deserve this. They ordinary Americans living in an ordinary American city who suddenly found themselves living under occupation, with federal agents patrolling their streets, with aircraft overhead, with munitions stored at a nearby military base. This isn't a normal. Don't let anyone tell you this is normal. Don't let anyone normalize military occupations of American cities. Don't let anyone convince you that killing American citizens is just an unfortunate side effect of law enforcement. Remember Renee Good. Remember Alex Pretty. Remember that they were Americans who died at the hands of their own government. Remember the families hiding in their homes. Remember the children growing up with trauma. Remember that this is happening right now in America in 2025, and then decide what you're going to do about it. I am scared. I am genuinely scared about where this is heading, but I am also angry, and I am determined because I still believe that America can be better than this. I still believe that we are a country where government serves the people, not the other way around, where military force isn't used against our own citizens, where dissent is protected, not punished. But that America, the America I believe in, only exists if we fight for it. If we refuse to accept this as normal, if we stand with Minneapolis and say, not here, not now, not ever. So here's my ask. Share this. Talk about what's happening in Minnesota. Don't let this story disappear from the news cycle. Don't let them conduct a military occupation in the shadows. Call your representatives and demand answers. Demand accountability for the deaths of Renee Good and Alex Pretty. Demand oversight of ICE operations. Demand that Congress act to prevent military occupations of American cities. Support the people of Minneapolis however you can. They on the front lines of something bigger than just immigration enforcement. They fighting for all of us. And prepare yourself. Because if Minneapolis falls, if this becomes normalized, if we accept that the federal government can occupy American cities and kill American citizens without consequence, then nowhere is safe. This is the moment. This is when we decide what kind of country we want to be. Do we want to be a country where federal agents threaten to erase people's voices, where military bases are used to occupy our own cities, where dissent is met with deadly force, or do we want to be something better? I know what I choose. I choose to stand with Minneapolis. I choose to demand accountability. I choose to fight for the America I believe in. The question is, what do you choose? Because this isn't a going away. Wave 4 runs through March 3rd. And then what? Wave 5? Wave 6? How many waves until every blue city in America is under occupation? Don't wait to find out. Act now. Speak now. Resist now. Because if not now, when? If not us, who? Minnesota needs us. America needs us. And